Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of LA Squared Broadcast. Why do we call ourselves the broadcast? Because you've heard of all the broadcasts. It's how President Trump got elected, I think. And we're the first ones to do a broadcast here in New Jersey. And we're so excited because we've had a whole slew of exciting guests so far. But I'm going to venture to say no one quite as exciting as the two gentlemen we have today. Okay, I'm a little biased because they're both personal and dear friends of mine who I think the world of. But I'm so excited to welcome them to the show. But first, let me kick it over to my co-host, Lisa Allen, the other LA in the LA Squared. So what do you have to say, Lisa?
I am super excited to have you guys on today. We're going to talk politics, personal. Here's some fun stories about the two of you. So, Laura, thank you for having these guys on. I can't wait.
Thank you. So I'd like to introduce our guest today. First, we have Assemblyman Brian Bergen. Brian, how many years have you been in the Assembly now? 3, 4?
5.5.
5.5. Wow. That went by fast. And I knew you went. So Brian is a current Assemblyman in the 26th District. My good friend Joe Labarbera is my colleague in Sussex County. So as you guys know, I'm the chairwoman of the Republican Party in Morris County. Joe is the chairman in Sussex County. That's only one of his many titles. But the reason we invited them both to here today is because they're also both veterans. And not only veterans like my dad who served, but, he might have had an office job. He doesn't tell too many people that. But, he served, but not in Iraq. These two gentlemen were actually boots on the ground and boots in the air in Iraq. And what came to be a year or so ago when Joe became the chair, Brian and I were talking about him, and Brian said, I literally, Laura, flew my helicopter over Joe's head and his troops and all of that. So I'm going to let them talk about that. But listeners, how cool is that we have two veterans with us today, two people that have dedicated their lives to service, two people that have given everything for our country, have sacrificed it all, and yet they're here still serving us today in a capacity, as representing us as constituents in the state of New Jersey. So why don't I turn it over? We'll start with you, Assemblyman. Why don't you talk a little bit about, when it was first you and Joe, maybe a little bit about your background in Iraq and how you guys both discovered that you were both there at the same time.
I just have to say amen, Laura. That was a great introduction.
Oh, yeah, she rocks, huh? So, yeah, Joe and I were just talking. Joe, how long have you been the chair now? When did you get into
year and a half? Year and a half.
Okay, so a year and a half ago, when Joe just got to be the chair, I obviously reached out to him because it's important to have relationships with all the chairs, not just my own chair, Laura, but all the chairs. So I reached out to Joe, and him and I started talking about just life and our background and stuff like that. Came to find out that, I was in Iraq in 2005. I flew out of a airport called Taji Airport, which is just north of Baghdad. And my responsibility was to basically fly missions in support of the ground troops in and around the Baghdad area. So Joe and he's a vet also, so we're talking, and it turns out Joe was in the same area at the same time, although he was on the ground doing very important work on the ground. So there's a high likelihood, although we never talked to each other, there, or even knew each other at the time, but there's a high likelihood that I was flying in the air over his head during some of his convoy operations or movements around that area, or operations in the area during that particular time. So it was a pretty cool thing to learn, Joe, right? And you were out of Camp Victory. Was that where you were out of?
Yeah, we were at a Victory, and I was on a little Iraqi base called Fob Hawk, which was just west of Baghdad, right before you got into Abu Ghraib.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know where Fob Hawk was, and I also Victory. I ran a little. My job in Iraq, I was an Apache helicopter pilot, but I had my main job in addition to that was to set up these things called forward arming and refueling points.
ARPs.
So I was a 3-5 platoon leader. So I set one up in Camp Victory for our aircraft that were operating in and around that area. Instead of coming back to Taji, they could land at Victory and refuel, rearm, and go back out. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's kind of neat. So it's a common bond we have to each other. Now we're at war with each other together all the time in politics, man. I mean, it's
a different kind of war, but it's war nonetheless.
I know.
Exactly. helping the insurgents.
That's it. It's crazy.
know,
But
right?
you know what's kind of interesting, just to segue to this a little bit. There's a lot of similarities, honestly, and Joe, I think you probably agree with me, between operations in war and politics.
They're exactly the same, except in politics, you're not shooting anybody.
But that's right. No one's trying to kill you. At least I don't know. There might be the people out there trying to take me out. I'm not positive, but from what I know, there's nobody trying to kill us. But the conduct of operations in a political environment when you're trying to run campaigns, it's similar to what you would do in combat scenarios, in that you have layered approaches to the conflict. You have different strategies. What happens if this happens? What's our next actions going to be? So I actually think being in the military significantly prepares you for the political environment. Would you agree, Joe?
100%. I mean, I think that's what the great Prussian theorist said, Karl von Clausewitz. He goes, war is simply an extension of politics by other means. So it's all the same thing. I mean, it's you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
I mean, you're bringing up Prussian theorists. I'm almost equipped for this interview.
You didn't know Joe was so well read. I'm telling you, he's gonna blow your mind today.
That's all. Just the YouTube.
Yeah, right.
But there is a lot of times, Joe. Go ahead, Lisa. Sorry,
Laura. No, you first.
No, I was going to say with Joe, there'll be a lot of times where I'll be like, "Oh, Joe, can you make this meeting on Thursday, blah, 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 blah." And he'll be like, "That reminds me back to when I was serving and combat." And he'll give like a combat story. He's always relating everything, even the smallest of things, back to his time of service, which I actually love. When I grew up, Joe, my dad every Saturday morning at 9:30 would blast Kate Smith, God Bless America, in our house for all the kids to get up. Like, we grew up in a very, very patriotic household. So, I mean, I can never thank the two of you enough for what you've done, but I am also in awe of it. And I love hearing the stories. So, why don't we turn it over to you for a minute, Joe? And do you have any recollections from that time, like where Brian might have been flying over your head?
I was in the brigade I was in was commanded by a man named Mark Milley, who I'm pretty sure everybody heard about. And he was a great commander that I had in my unit. In fact, he put me in my first rifle company. He put me in my first company command, Colonel Mark Milley. And the job we had was protecting the airport. That was the initial job we got. And then Milley, being Milley, kept expanding our mission scope over and over again. We got to where we had 9 battalions at one point. We had Route Irish, which we called the Gauntlet because of all the car bombs that were hitting Route Irish that went from the Baghdad airport all the way out to outside of Baghdad. And then we ended up taking the neighborhood underneath it called Al Jihad. We had the Abu Ghraib. We had north of Abu Ghraib, 431 was up there, 214 infantry. My battalion that I was serving in was down there. And then we had these little villages to the south, and our AO almost went out to Fallujah. And it was an interesting time. It was
amazing. I love it.
Mm-hmm. We were in a Sunni area. We did a couple of missions in Sadr City. We had one of our companies that actually fought in Sadr City. One of the guys we lost in Sadr City was actually descended from a guy who'd been one of the Medal of Honor recipient named Calvin Titus in my unit. And then my job was, I was a staff officer at the time, but I was the battalion civil military operations officer. So I worked and lived on an Iraqi base most of the time. And then I worked almost exclusively with the sheikhs, the imams, and all the local characters. But as far as our aviation support, constantly we had Apaches in support of us. Kiowas in support of us. Now, what was your call sign again, Brian?
I was Whiskey 16.
Yeah. So it was we once our scout platoon. Here's a good story to tell about Apache guys. Once our scout platoon went into an action where they foiled an ambush. So they had some guys in this high reed line by a canal, and they could see them with their night vision. They had RPGs, they had weapons, etc. So the commander was a fellow named Bill Prainer. He was the HAC company commander, but he was out there running around with his scouts, and he was going to burn down the whole field to get him out of there. And then it came on the net that we had some Apache support. So he had the Apaches hover right over him and shine lights. And he was just waiting to clear the fires. And then the guys came up and gave up. And it turns out one of them was the son of a local sheikh. So then my job was to go talk to the local sheikh because the sheikh wanted his son. He came to me. And these sheikhs show up, and they were real hardcore Saddam guys, real hardcore Baathists. They had the tattoos and everything.
Oh, my God.
And, so the sheikh tells me, he goes, look, my son was just out there fishing at night, and he saw these guys with weapons, and he knew they were making a mistake, so he talked them out of it, and he was taking his weapons to bring them to you guys. I'm like, that's really nice.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Super cool. So you both now spend a lot of time trying to fix the state of New Jersey, and it's not easy. Brian, you serve in the assembly, and you're the minority. And Joe, well, even though Sussex County definitely leans Republican, but still you have your own set of challenges. Like, what do you guys think the best path for New Jersey to turn the state around is moving forward? Brian, what do you think?
Well, we're in a good time, I would say, right now. A lot of potential right now. But I will caution everybody that there's a lot of people out there that just believe that, number one, they are the heroes that made New Jersey Trump country. And everything that they've done has led to the successes. But I was listening to a podcast the other day, Joe Rogan and Mark Zuckerberg. And one of the things that was really interesting in that was Mark Zuckerberg pointed out that internationally this year, incumbents lost all over the world. There was a massive shift internationally where the incumbents were lost in all these elections. So a portion, at least, of what happened here in the United States was attributable to global trends related to wanting to get rid of the incumbents for a variety of different reasons, immigration, a lot of different stuff. But I think it's important to know that because a lot of times, especially in New Jersey, we'll have a good election cycle. Everybody thinks they're God's gift to political strategy.
Oh, yeah.
And then they do the same thing they were doing before, but it doesn't have the same results because they forgot all those extraneous factors. So there's a lot of opportunity here in New Jersey because of the current climate, but we have to do things that will win despite whatever the climate is, because that can change, the way the wind blows. Trump can do something tomorrow that can totally change the sentiment in New Jersey for him and for the Republican Party. So hopefully he's not, and I don't think he's on track to do that, but it is possible. So we just need to constantly evolve and put down roots to make us a more effective operation. Again, I think that's where guys like Joe and I can really be effective because we have a methodical approach to winning. And like Laura loves what I say, winners win. If you're a winner, you will win despite the odds and no matter the circumstances. You play within the rules you're given and you win. And that's what the military teaches Joe and I to do. And that's what we plan on doing. So I don't know, I'll kick it over to you, Joe. What do you think?
I love that.
I love what you just said. It's absolutely perfect because the first thing we got to do is have an articulated end state. Like they'll teach guys like me and Brian as like cadets or second lieutenants or junior NCOs or whatever. The first thing you got to do is you got to turn the map around and look at it from the enemy's point of view. Then you got to visualize what's it going to look like when we win. And that's what we see often a lot in politics. Everybody has all these causes and reasons for existence, but then you ask them, okay, based on your plan or based on what you're saying, what does it look like when you win? And that's where I think the big advantage is for us as Republicans who lean conservative and versus the Democrats is that they don't have an articulated end state. They have a fantasy that's in their mind that nobody knows except them. As we articulate our end state, and amongst each other we do it, but I think we do a bad job at getting it out amongst the people. If we can articulate an end state that goes beyond our current scope. Whenever I hear Republicans on the media looking at it from my perspective, who's not, an elected official except for like a county committee, all we hear about is fiscal, and it sounds like we're whining. If we can have an articulated end state and we can expand our message to hit all fronts, I think we can push the ball down the field a lot better than we establish lines of effort like we would do. And each line of effort has a part of that. So like you take an objective, like Brian's going to go do an assault with his Apache platoon. He's going to take out 5-6 tanks. He's going to assign each tank and he's going to a particular a helicopter to destroy that tank. We have to have a line of effort that's resourced with a specific mission. Right now, it feels like we're kind of all over the place. It feels like it's, hey, you do this and you do that, at least in party operations. It's like, I'll take what I can get. But definitely we need to focus our resources along lines of effort to actually accomplish tangible results. And that's going to have to be something directed by leadership. But that's what we're trying to do in Sussex anyway.
You know, the presidential election really reiterated that New Jersey is a purple state. The fact that Trump only lost by 6%, and Biden lost by, I can't remember the number, 18%, something around that.
Yeah.
What is your message this year in terms of running for election, Assemblyman? Because you're going to be on the ballot. There are 80 legislative seats up this year, 54 Democrat, 26 Republicans. So what is your message this year so that we can win?
Well, you talk about the messaging.
Without telling anybody your plan.
Oh, yeah. Well,
do not give away your plan.
No, that's fine. So the message in terms to people who are running elections on the Republican side would be this. Basic blocking and tackling wins elections. It's all about raising money and voter contact. And if you're not doing either of those two things, you're wasting your time. Anytime doing anything besides raising money and voter contact is a waste of time. And then you get into the voter contact sphere and you start to break that down into what are the most effective ways to contact your voters and prioritize that based on the money that you have available to spend. If you have unlimited money, you do TV. If you have less money, you're limited to mail at the peak. If you have even less money, you're limited to socials, and that's it, and some more targeted direct stuff. So in terms of the tactics of it, my message to people is stick to the basics. The basics are what's winning. And then when it comes to messaging in terms of what you're going to communicate to people, local issues win elections. Everybody right now is running to say how much they love Trump, how much they'll support Trump, how much they're the more Trumper than the person before them, because they think that is what's going to carry him over because Trump did so well. But I will say, and I'll bet on this with every dollar I have, local issues win elections. And one thing that Vin Gopal did very well, Democrat, did in the 11th district, was he had separate mailers for different towns specific to their town's issues. And that is the type of thing that wins elections. And so if we do that, if people stay focused on the basics and then they tailor their messaging to the areas in which they're campaigning, they'll have a tremendous lot more wins and victories than if they try to psychoanalyze exactly what the Republicans want to hear, what people want to hear. I think it's better the way I present it than any other way.
I'm just gonna. You're absolutely right, and I'm just gonna kind of tack on this that in New Jersey, even though Trump is popular across the state, he is not popular in all areas. And so local matters. I mean, there are people that lost elections because Trump was at the top of the ticket in certain districts. And the reality is, if you focus on kitchen table issues in your local town, you're going to be successful. So, and I think, so I just wanted to say that because New Jersey is a very diverse state.
And I think it's also a precursor to you being a good elected official. Because if you're going to run for something and you don't have a very clear understanding of the issues that matter to people in their own little area, then you're not going to be good at your job anyway. So it's an exercise in winning elections, but it's also a bigger exercise in being a good elected official.
I love that.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
So
what
Laura,
would you say though? Oh, sorry, Lisa, go ahead. Go ahead.
No. No. I just asked 2 questions. I could continue to talk.
So what do you think though, as far as like a statewide, like what are our chances statewide, do you guys think, about taking back the governors or the state house and winning the governorship for the Republicans? Do you think it's a realistic outlook, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, from my foxhole, from my perspective, and there's the old adage about you ever hear the blind man and the elephant? 10 blind men are looking at an elephant and they're all feeling, and one person thinks the elephant looks like a trunk, and one person feels like the elephant looks like a pole, and the other grabs the tail and thinks it looks like a rope. Coming from my perspective, what I saw was very unique, and just looking at the numbers, Hudson County seems to be the reason that we came so close. Now, the Democrats play identity politics, just like the Assemblyman was mentioning. If you look at the Dems website at the state level, they're approaching it from the point of identity. Locally, they're talking about it from the point of local issues. So the Dems break it down purely by identity politics. And they lost with the Hispanics. They lost big time with the Hispanics, and they lost with men. Male Hispanics, I think, if you want to say in the military what we call a decisive point of the operation, where you mass all combat power, achieve the marked advantage over the enemy, that's the term we used to memorize. If I had to say I had limited funds and limited resources, I would resource the turning out of the Hispanic male vote in Hudson, because with the the Democrats' social issues, one thing about leftists of the political left, and I love to pontificate about leftism and its effect on the modern world, post-Enlightenment, et cetera. But one thing about leftists is they always overreach. They're never happy. If you gave a leftist a great hamburger, he's not going to be happy with it. He's going to want something else. So when you give the left identity politics, it's not just enough for them to say, we're looking out for a disadvantaged group and we're trying to help them. They have to go farther, and they have to shove it in your face, and then they have to bend the knee to some cause that they want you to pay for. So I think what happened with the Hispanics is the Hispanics are fundamentally conservative people. They're fundamentally people of faith. They're fundamentally people of family. They don't like the leftist social issues. So as they start growing and solidifying in America, and as they start becoming part of the established American process, the recent ones, I think we're going to see a big turn. And that's why we saw it go from 18 to almost 40% in Hudson County. Huge turn. Yeah. And if we don't go into the Democrat areas, I mean, there are more Republican voters in Democrat counties. In Democrat-dominated counties, there's more Republican voters than in my county.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't do this thing where, hey, I'm really happy here in Sussex. As long as I'm winning in my town full of 3,000 people, I'm good. No, because they will come for us.
Yeah, you're totally right.
Yeah, we have to project combat power. We have to do best to their areas.
Yep. See what I'm saying? It always goes back to combat with Joe. I love it.
Projecting combat power, right?
No,
so we need to project political power into areas that most Republicans are afraid to go.
Mm-hmm. I love it. What do you think, Brian?
Well, first of all, it depends on who we have at the top of the ticket. If we have somebody like Bill Spadia, we might as well just pack it in. But beyond him or whoever is going to be at the top of the ticket, the road to the governorship is going to be paved through the legislature, and the road to the legislature is paved through the local municipalities. So if we don't look at this as a whole approach, we're not going to win. And if we do, we could win. One of the things that Jack Ciattarelli did very well during his campaign in 2021 was invested time and resources in all the different campaigns all across the state. That's why we saw so many assembly and Senate level wins. But you have to do that. Everybody has to be rowing in the same direction. We have to have good quality candidates running and in the assembly races all across the state, which I think we're projected to do. And then we have to have people running tough races in the municipalities, even ones that are difficult to win. This is the way that we don't win with a single person or single campaign running at the top of the ticket. Everybody's got to be rowing in the same direction all across the state. And I think a lot of us are excited to do it. We'll be less excited if Bill Spadia is at the top. But I mean, if somebody else normal is running for governor, then we'd be happy to help him or her.
Or her. Do you think somebody else? You think somebody else could jump in at this point?
You never know. The filing deadline is not here.
That's right.
So you just never know. Could be
you
you.
guys are gonna guess. Who would it be? Who do you think might still jump
or
in?
Ali.
Yeah, if I didn't have so many skeletons.
The game changer is going to be if Trump does an endorsement. If Trump comes down and does an endorsement.
He won't do an endorsement, though, I don't think. Do you?
He
endorsed the last two New Jersey races he endorsed. They lost, and we know he doesn't like to lose.
Yeah, I don't know, Joe. I mean, he endorsed Christine Glasser, and that was a waste of his breath. And
he also endorsed in the state committee race, and that didn't pan out.
Yeah, so I don't know if he'll get involved in the primary. I mean, we'll see. Who knows?
One thing one note: there are knowns and then there are unknowns whenever you estimate. And here is a known with President Trump: he is incalculable. It is incalculable.
That's true.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes, and I mean, I read his books. Every time he loses on something, he comes back and he wins 2 or 3 times. Now, look, I want to say I fully know Donald Trump is a human being and a man. I don't worship him like a god like some of our friends do. I know he's a human being. I know he's a man. I love him to death. I'm a big supporter of him. He does come back harder, and he doesn't like when he hates to lose. And when he doesn't get his way, he makes it a mission to get his way. That comeback he had, that's got to be the greatest comeback.
I agree with you, Joe. That's the greatest comeback of all time.
I'm a history
political geek. Or non-political.
Yeah, for fun, I'm like,
I agree.
Stuff from YouTube history stuff. For fun, I'm a history geek. You should see my library, right? When I don't think in America we've ever seen somebody come back to the level of.
I agree with you.
I mean,
is like, it's inspirational.
I know.
It's unbelievable. Only in America.
It is. It's such a great story. Like, I was just talking to my oldest son, Jack, about that last night because we were talking about him. And I'm like, imagine coming back from where he was even like a year and a half ago, right? I mean, he just made the ultimate comeback. It is amazing.
Yeah.
Is he going to tell us about the drones? I really want to. I'm still on like, why are we seeing drones still?
It was supposed to be day 2. It was supposed to be day 2. We're still waiting. So who knows?
I know. I heard he was going to come out with the report. I saw one flying very low the other night. Very low.
That's what he said.
They exist.
Yeah.
It's true. They do. They do.
Yeah. I mean, drones, I don't know if you guys know, the college I work at, we have one of the best, we have a great drone program. We work with Embry Riddle and everything. Lots of people fly drones. Lots of drones.
Not these kind of drones.
Not these kind.
No, we fly big ones. You should see our crop feeders. They're huge. Now, I do believe that there is something going on, there's a security issue happening. And I do believe they're trying to use drones to find it. And they got to come out and they got to let us know what's going on. Because the other thing is, oh, by the way, that was my favorite quote of like the time I've been in New Jersey, when Brian says, Governor Murphy, give me an Apache from the New Jersey National Guard and I'll go shoot one of these drones down. Oh my God, I wish he would have done it. That would have been awesome.
Would have been fun.
That would have been awesome. I would have done the sensitive site exploitation when it crashed. I can't seem to tie together any kind of pattern though. It's so random. It's so random where we're finding drones that look so big and look like they're conducting such surveillance. And then simultaneously, it's very interesting that a lot of the hysteria, the biggest problem that I'm worried about is the fact that the government's not getting a handle on this and putting this out. It's going to feed hysteria and it's going to feed suppositions and it's going to feed misidentifications. And that's not good for people. That's not good for people.
No,
I agree.
They've been going on for a couple of years, right? I mean, other states have seen it. It just happened to be that Jersey and New York had an increase, but this has been going on for a couple of years. I mean, do you guys? And I would think that if it is adversarial, they would do something. So, you know, a question to the two of you: would you assume that it's our own military?
Yeah. Maybe not military, but there's a lot of military contractors doing different sorts of work, and I would assume it's them. Yeah,
because it's also seen by the Air Force bases too. So I don't know. It seems very peculiar.
Getting a drone license isn't hard. I got mine. Buying a drone is very easy, and you can buy big ones. And then you know, the key though is the reason that I'm not like, I know that there was thoughts that the drones could be malicious in some form, but they got their lights on. They're operating in full view. And here's what's really interesting. None of them have crashed yet, and drones crash a lot.
I know, that's true, Jeff. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
I know. No one's seen it.
Didn't one crash? Sorry, my picture's frozen. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep,
didn't one crash in like Harding?
That I know of.
I don't think so. No. We would have known. That's Mars County. Yeah.
Yeah, there was some rumors about that, and the golf course community you're talking about, right, Lisa?
Yeah.
There was some rumors about that, but
the technology of drones is phenomenal. Back when Brian and I were in Iraq, and in the year after, the U.S. military used to give us drones to fly, and you'd have to run and throw it in the air, and then it almost inevitably crashed. And they were supposed to be disposable, but then the Army being the Army is like, you better recover it. It's equipment. So like when we were in Iraq, I have drone. I went back after my time in there when Brian was there, and I was a rifle company commander. And I had guys that would, literally sneak out of our little cop to recover the drone because they didn't want me to know that they crashed it. And then they would actually bring back the drone because we were crashing it all the time. The Iraqis would get them and bring them back to us. And then we got so disgusted with the constant crashes, we didn't want to fly them anymore because then recovering the drone became an entire mission. You'd have to send a platoon out just to find a drone that was supposed to be disposable. Yeah, I'm endangering lives to recover a freaking junk ass Raven drone that I don't even want to use anyway, and I got to fly it for X many hours just so my commander can put it on a PowerPoint slide and tell Brigade that we did it. So that used to really piss us the hell off. But now, I mean, I got my 6-year-old flying around a little toy drone. Now you got to keep it like around between here and 400 feet. I mean, there's all these rules where you can fly them. What I'm able to do with this little tiny drone and what I'm able to do with my cell phone, it's incredible. I wish I'd have had this in Iraq. You put your cell phone in the little control panel, you fly the drone around, and literally you can see everything on your phone from a little camera that's like this big.
I know, it's super cool.
And I paid $130 for this thing.
I love it.
When we were out at Embry-Riddle in Pressman, Arizona, we went to Gunsight, and my team worked with Embry-Riddle's team. And Embry-Riddle is they're the leads on this. They're all retired Air Force pilots and guys like that. The stuff we're doing with drones is phenomenal. So, I mean, we're flying them all over the desert. I mean, we probably had 6, 7, 8 drones flying around, even at night. We even went to the range and we were shooting at night. So this way the law enforcement guys could fly their drones over and try to identify different types of small arms fire based on what they were watching. So, I mean, we might have a big plethora of training versus real life operations versus hobby people. And it's just chaos. It's just chaos because there's no way the FAA can manage all of it,
Right. I wonder if we know an assemblyman that can address this in the legislature.
We do. Give him an Apache, he'll shoot one of them down, and we'll find out what's going on.
Can I switch gears, Laura? I have a question about the state budget. Okay, Brian, this is for you. Because in 2013, Governor Christie signed a $33 billion budget, right? In 2025, our budget is up to $56.7 billion, I think. And Senator Bramnick said that's 18% over 3 years. And by the way, we have a surplus. So I don't even know why we're raising our budget if we have a surplus. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, so we do have a surplus, but the scarier part is that we have a budget deficit. So what that means is there is a surplus, but this past year there was a $2.1 billion structural deficit. So the budget that you mentioned includes taking $2.1 billion from the surplus in order to fund it. So that's not even from revenue. So if you continue on that trend, your surplus is gone, and then you have a $2 billion hole, which is a lot of billions of dollars to be in debt. And so the state's budget, it's crazy, but it's full of just absolute nonsense. I mean, I don't really know how to categorize it other than it's insane. Now, there are certain things we have to do that maybe have not been done in the past, and I won't take this away from what Governor Murphy has done. We should be fully funding the school funding formula, definitely. We should be making pension payments that we're supposed to make, definitely. But there's a million other things we're doing that are not right. Mm-hmm. And Christmas tree items, we call them, or pork, they're called in the federal government, things that are added on that constantly inflate this budget. And they act like they don't have a care in the world. But the reality is this is all coming home to roost. They had a lot of COVID money that came in. They added all that stuff to the budget. It's been overinflated. And like I said, last year, it was slated to spend $2.1 billion more than we took in. And believe me, this year's budget is going to be as high or more, just taking more money out of the surplus.
I think that's outrageous.
Yeah, no, it's like it's insane. It's just to watch it unfold is absolutely insane. Just the other day, I was down in Trenton. Actually, last month I was down in Trenton, and one of the assembly people, his name is Assemblyman Gabriel Rodriguez from Hudson County. Hasn't said about 8 words since he's been in the legislature. The first thing the guy does is, West New York did an overpass, and they had $3 million that was allocated to it that wasn't required for the project. So it defaulted back to the property tax relief fund for the state. Well, this guy decides that he wants to take it back out of the property tax relief fund and use it to build a rec center in West New York. So he came to the legislature, proposed taking $3 million and put it towards the rec center. By the way, the rec center is going to cost $35 million. I don't know where he's getting the other $32 million. And the mayor of West New York is his godfather. Like, how about this crap? This is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. So,
they get away with, man.
But take that example I just gave you. This guy taking $3 million out of the property tax relief fund and using it for a recreation center in West New York. that's going to end up costing $35 million, and replicate that amongst 1,000 other stupid things. And that's why our budget is so big.
Yeah.
It's
And that's why
ridiculous.
our taxes are so high. That's why the property taxes are obscene.
That's right. So here's what some people forget. Your Congress people go down to D.C. and it's acceptable for them to lobby to bring money back to the district because New Jersey sends more than we receive.
Right.
So they're trying to get more share of what New Jersey provided back to New Jersey. That's a good way to do things. But in New Jersey, if I was to get $50 million to some town in my district for something, right?
Mm-hmm.
That $50 million has to be taxed. Every year you have to have a budget that's balanced. So we would have to tax people $50 million more in order for me to bring that $50 million back. So it's not the same thing at all. You have to raise the budget every time that you're bringing things in, and people forget that, Big
Really
difference.
good point.
From a economic historical perspective, I'm a big reader of a guy called Niall Ferguson. He's an economic historian. Tax farming is unsustainable.
Right.
I mean, to have an economy that is sustainable and functional, you have to have markets, you have to have resources. What are we doing in the state for economic development under the Democrats? What market?
Their version of economic development is constant tax incentives and there's also this thing called the Economic Development Authority, the EDA, which I think is a total train wreck of an organization that's supposed to be doing a lot of that stuff. The fact is they're not doing a lot, Joe. They're not business owners. They don't understand what it's like to run a business or to invest in things and have things thrive. They just don't get it.
Yeah,
right.
Agriculture is my passion, and because we got a lot of programs and everything we're doing for precision agriculture and ag development. The Netherlands, which has a fraction of the arable land of New Jersey, outproduces New Jersey in berries and fruits and specialty crops. They have a higher the Netherlands is second in the world to an agricultural export GDP than the United States. That is frightening.
Unbelievable.
That's it. Those Dutch, man, they know how to do it. That's why half the people in Pompton Plains, which is in Pequannock, so the Pequannock Township, they're all Dutch. Everybody who grows the flowers Dutch.
Really?
Oh man, they got the green thumb. The fertilizer in their blood. I'm telling you.
Yeah. So then the other statistic that I found interesting, and I've heard this, I haven't read it, examined it, or studied it, but this was on a meeting that we had with the Ag Board and all the community colleges, is that 575 farms control 2/3 of the New Jersey GDP for agriculture. The ag GDP in New Jersey, I believe, is $7 billion. The highest revenue producing, and another interesting fact in New Jersey, is actually equestrian. So what we're dealing with is we have this enormous agricultural infrastructure that could be operating on all cylinders, bringing wealth to the state like you wouldn't believe. But you can't get a lot of farms truly profitable because we got a supply chain that is regional and global, and then market access is so difficult, and then operational costs because of embedded taxes everywhere are so high. So where are economic development experts? Where are our economists going through New Jersey industry by industry and saying, hey, we have X amount of businesses producing this much. Why don't we encourage it? And that seems like a line of effort that we got to hit rather than hearing the same old mantra about tax, because like I can tell you in my county, we're developing Stockholm syndrome. We're just becoming like how to avoid the tax. We're not thinking. I mean, a couple of our towns are doing a really good job. Vernon and Andover, they're doing an incredible job as far as expanding their markets, bringing business in, smart development, smart zoning, compatible with what the people want. They're doing a great job. But for the most part, they're twiddling their thumbs and they're just waiting for the bomb to drop. And it's almost like it's a culture that has given us a sense of Stockholm syndrome, like we're all here to die until we're going to pay taxes until we're dying. We're going to watch people move out of the state and that's it. So it's a real problem. We need a cultural shift in this state to start thinking of the economy like a real economy and not a tax farming economy, in my view.
Yeah, good point.
Do you know, Joe, because I've asked this and it's hard to get the information. Do you know how much New Jersey produces food? Like how much of our agriculture actually produces food that we as residents eat, or do we farm it out? Do you know that?
I can't quote statistics on that, but I have looked at it. We don't export nearly as much as we could.
Okay.
We don't export nearly as much as we could, and overwhelmingly it's in berries and specialty crops.
Mm-hmm.
We have the potential. Our dairy industry is just almost destroyed, and the beef industry could be a huge boon to the state. But the problem is we lack processing centers that are USDA certified, that have the capacity to truly engine an economy, to have a beef or a protein or any kind of livestock industry. We're working on that, actually. Warren County is actually building a meat processing plant. It's going to be state of the art. I went out to Penn State. Penn State uses AI. Penn State's processing plant is incredible. They actually got PhDs in meat sciences running it. So we're going to replicate that in Warren County. And if we can build processing centers, if we could just get townships and counties oriented on actual economic stimulus and get the New Jersey government away, we could do a lot of good. But one thing I have noticed is a lot of self-interests. I mean, people are put up roadblocks for the purpose of trying to get some kind of benefit or some kind of reward out of it. And that's another thing we got to cut. We got to be ruthless about, especially in our job, Laura, in the party aspect, is that we have to call people into account when they're stonewalling a very good plan for their own sake. You know, we need a little bit more altruism, you know, like Brian does in political office. And then we need to basically support developers, because the amount of this state's jealousy is like at Iraq levels. Anytime any business does anything well, you go on social media, you look at the town halls, and people are just wanting to kill them.
I know, you're right.
What is this, the French Revolution?
I agree with you, Joe.
What's going on?
It feels like the French Revolution.
Republicans too. I mean, I got Republicans that are obsessed about taxing this guy, taxing that guy. We're supposed to be the party of them. Didn't we fight a revolution about this like 200 years ago? We're not supposed to be drowning each other.
We know where you're going, Joe.
Yeah.
Well, the corporate tax responsibility will solve everything. We're going to tax the 800,000 small businesses and make them pay the extra money to New Jersey Transit that they have squandered over the last 20, 30 years. How do we fix New Jersey Transit?
I don't know. Brian knows that. Brian knows.
I don't know. Put someone competent in charge. Me and Joe could probably fix it.
But seriously, Brian, I mean, think about this. To go out, I mean, to propose that we are going to do a corporate responsibility tax. Now, mind you, I know there wasn't a lot of work going on during COVID, but there was a period of time where people could have been out doing work post, at some point when people were starting to go back out to work, and there weren't a lot of people taking the train. They were working from home. We could have done something with New Jersey Transit. There's lots of money that goes into New Jersey Transit. Now we have congestion pricing too. So, but I mean, separate from New Jersey Transit, but we're celebrating the fact that there's congestion pricing, but we're not celebrating the fact that, New Yorkers are saying that they don't care about crime and people dying on subways, but they're happy that there's congestion pricing. So public transportation, I'm very passionate about this, because public transportation is what is the engine of this whole area from Florida down, up to Boston. We rely on the trains. So you're right. We got to put someone capable, but there has to be a better solution than just taxing our businesses again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it's and by the way, the first year of that tax didn't really go to New Jersey Transit anyway. It went to the general fund, which was pretty messed up. But yeah, you got to put people who are competent in charge. And if I was the governor tomorrow, which I'm not going to be, but if I was, I would bring in all the people from New Jersey Transit, all the executives or whoever I was going to hire to put in those positions. And I would say, go do what you got to do to figure out exactly what you need to get these problems fixed. Exactly. Tell me what the dollar amount is, what the resources are that you need, what the what is it that you need? I want it all. Yeah. No piecemeal. I want it all. And then come back to the table and make the investments that you need. Because the primary role of government, one of the primary roles is infrastructure, right. Safety, security, and infrastructure. So it's very, very, very important to do it. And listen, it might be a $10 billion fix. It might be a $20 billion fix. It might be a $100 billion fix. I don't know what the answer is, but you just need to know what the total investment is and everything that needs to be put in, and then build a plan around that. I feel like too often they're trying to piecemeal the approach and nickel and dime and cut corners here and there. you got to have a full understanding what the problem, what it is to fix it, and then start from there, and then put people in place who can get it done.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Love it.
And strong
Good
people.
ideas.
Once money's put out by a government entity that says we're going to do A, B, and C, then all of a sudden all the vultures come out because everybody wants a piece of the pie. So there has to be a process to make sure that it doesn't become like what happened in California. I got a buddy who's an engineer out on their high-speed rail they were doing. And he says all this is a way to just fleece money from the state. There is no one in there who really cares about building a high-speed rail. It's just, what can I hook up my buddy with? What can I make money on, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. That does happen. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Man, that's another problem. That's another big problem.
We need a Doge for New Jersey.
It's true.
That's right. All in due time once we get a Republican governor.
Yeah.
So I just want to hit on something before we wrap up. This week was 20 years ago, right, Brian? Now, I'm not going to ask you to repeat the story because when you told me the story last week, I started sobbing, right? But this is your friend Joe, right? You want to talk about it a little bit to see I get all worked up.
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks for bringing it up, Laura, because it is important. It's now 20 years and 3 days since. So that picture was actually taken about 10 days prior to his death, maybe 7 days prior to his death. What's interesting about the picture, in a more positive note, though, Laura, is that limo behind us, Joe, you'll appreciate this. So Joe and I wanted to roll up to go to war in a impressive fashion. So we showed up to the flight line to deploy, Joe, in that stretch white limo.
Oh my God!
We pulled up.
Only pilots would do this.
Only pilots would do that. So we pulled up and we just sat there for a few minutes and let everybody soak in. There was a stretch white limo out there. And the baseball bat in my right hand, I was in a meeting when I first took over the 3-5 platoon. And for some reason, I said, if you need to find me, I'll be the guy with the bat. And so I got a Louisville Slugger. I carried that around with me everywhere I went. I carried a baseball bat around, which is kind of interesting. So, but Joe unfortunately, Joe unfortunately died just a few days after that in Kuwait before we pushed up into Iraq. You know what's interesting is before we got out of that limo, Joe said to me, Bri, 1 in 75 of us is going to die. And I was like, what are you talking about, dude? He's like, no, that's just, I did the math. He's very smart. It's 1 in 75. And to this day, I feel very strongly that, Joe is proud that he was that 1 in 75 to spare 74 of us having to worry about it. So he's a great dude. He was a far better person than I could ever be. And we just do 20 years. It was pretty sad. Yeah.
Unbelievable. And you went to California to be with his family, which I think was so wonderful of you. But
yeah, me and my West Point classmates, a bunch of West Point classmates went, and we got to help his family grieve a little bit this year. And it was really, really nice. And his nephew bears the name Joe Lusk. And we spent a lot of time talking to him. He's interested in possibly going to West Point. So that would be kind of cool. I mean, I'll have to drink a lot and cry a lot if that happens, but he's planning on going. So, and we both shaved our heads right before going too. It's kind of cool. So,
and you remembered him, right, Joe? Didn't you? When I was telling you about him earlier, did you say or no?
Well, no. He mentioned he was killed in Kuwait. On my second tour, we had an Apache helicopter that had crashed the tour before, and it was outside of a place called Janabi Village that we found a lot of the artifacts and leftovers of the pilot and his helicopter that we had pulled out of there. We'd found them. They'd been buried in a big pit, and we did a whole sensitive site exploitation on that. So I wasn't sure, but you said he was killed in Kuwait, so that wouldn't have been him.
Yeah, no, it wasn't him. But and I don't want to get into the details of the whole thing, but I will tell you that flying, particularly an attack aircraft, but any aircraft, low to the ground in a desert environment is very difficult because there's no texture to the terrain, so it's very hard to determine how far you are from the ground when you're going at high speeds and very low. And so it's pretty common for somebody to crash early on into a deployment because you just haven't developed that skill and you haven't developed the fear of the ground that you need to have. Yeah.
Well, we're forever grateful to your friend Joe. So thank you for sharing that with us. Do you guys have anything to say before we wrap up? Any final thoughts or comments or anything you want to get across to our listeners?
Well, about the ground, he just sparked a memory of an air assault we did, and I went out the back, and the pilot hadn't landed completely on the ground because of the high read, so I went asses over elbows, tumbling when I jumped out of that.
Really?
Yeah, and then I landed on my feet in the PLF and got right back up.
Oh
and then
my
I
God, Jeff.
yeah, and then I see the crew chief going like that, and they landed, and all my guys got.
Oh my God.
It was like a 4-foot fall. Yeah, I remember him saying,
Holy cow.
damn pilots.
Unbelievable.
Well, Laura, I'll just say that, well, first of all, I appreciate what you guys are doing. This thing is cool. It's an honor to be on here with Joe, because I have a tremendous amount of respect for Joe. And you know, the future of what we have going on is really great. You know, we've made some gains and had some losses Republican Party wise. There's a bunch of curmudgeons out there saying we're not doing anything every day, and you're right. All they do is whine and complain from, you know, their comfy chair behind a mic at 1015. But we have these people doing that. But the reality is, you got guys like Joe and I, and like you, Laura and Lisa, that are out there really making a difference every single day. It's awesome stuff, and you know, it's just great to be part of a team with such great people all trying to get a common cause done. It makes me happy every day, honestly.
I agree with you. I think it's fun what we do. I mean, it's meaningful, but it's also a ton of fun, right, Brian? And who has more laughs than you and I?
And it's not many people.
Not many people, right? All right. Well, we can't thank you guys enough for joining us. We hope you come back on the show. We really appreciate your time. We know it's very valuable. Anything you want to say, Lisa?
Yeah, I just wanted to say really quick. My dad has since passed, but he fought in Vietnam. And one of the last conversations I had with him, he was in the Air Force, and he used to fly bombers in Vietnam. And I said to him, you know, I grew up in a generation where in schools, it wasn't quite as pervasive as it is today, but there was a lot of, you know, we shouldn't have been in Vietnam, that kind of discussion in schools. And so I said to him, or questioned him, I said, you know, why did you fight in Vietnam? Would you do it all over again? And he said, when I saw what they were doing, what communism was doing to that country, I would do it all over again. He told me some of the atrocities that happened. And he was like, you know what, we got people out of there. And because of us being in there, there were people that survived and they're living today. And, you know, very much that sentiment is expressed to you guys. It changed the way I see the world, and that we have to fight for the freedom and we have to fight what we believe in. And I couldn't be prouder of having you guys in our party. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. And in any conflict, you know, you can't judge the individual soldiers and their actions by the conflict as a whole, you know, because everybody in their own way makes a difference to some degree, you know, whether or not the justice of the war comes to, you know, be good or bad. You know, all soldiers, you know, in some way do a lot of good by being there.
Well, thank you for your service.
Awesome.
And thank you for your service in the Republican Party, too.
All right, you guys. Thank you again. Have a great weekend.
We enjoyed everybody. Thanks for watching today.
Thank you.
I'll see you on the next episode of LA Squared.
I love it.
Broadcast. Bye.
Bye.